when the first great empire collapsed, the continent of Tamriel lost its only anchor. The central throne sat empty, and no single ruler had the strength to hold the vast landmass together. Without a central authority to enforce the law, the unified borders dissolved almost overnight. The continent shattered into dozens of isolated, competing territories. This fracture triggered the interregnum, an era of unrelenting political chaos spanning 9 centuries. Kings and warlords retreated behind natural borders, isolating themselves in respective biomes, hiding within harsh deserts, freezing snowlands, and dense forests, cutting off all outside contact. Inside these isolated pockets, deep suspicion took hold. Every local ruler convinced themselves they were the sole legitimate heir to the continent. They drained their local resources to build defensive military forces, trusting no one. Because every faction prioritized its own immediate survival over the continent's stability, they created a self-destructive loop. Their narrow focus guaranteed centuries of unbroken conflict. Inside the dim war councils, these rulers scrambled to find an exit from the chaos they had engineered. Their primary strategy was to merge their armies with their former rivals, forming desperate regional alliances. But these pacts were forged in deep-seated mistrust. Generals turned on each other before campaigns finished. Borders shifted back and forth by a few miles, resulting in zero permanent strategic gains. While the elite played a futile game of territory, the population suffered the consequences. Scholars, mages, and everyday travelers were forced to navigate a hostile, unpredictable landscape, littered with the ruins of a broken society. Tamriel was locked in a bloody, immovable stalemate. The system was broken, and the regional kings fighting over the pieces lacked the vision to put it back together. Breaking this deadlock required an outsider, a commander who looked past the immediate battlefields and saw the wider horizon. Tiber Septim began as a tactical commander for a minor king. He lacked a throne, but he possessed a unique method. He recruited the weary veterans of the very armies he defeated, offering them a clear purpose in a world of aimless war. While the old guard obsessed over moving their regional borders a few inches, Septim viewed Tamriel as a single contiguous entity. He ignored the artificial divisions entirely. He executed a 2-phase strategy. First came diplomatic assimilation. He used his early victories to prove he could provide the stability the kings lacked, securing treaties with exhausted kingdoms to absorb them into a unified bloc. He broke the resource drought that had crippled previous rulers by pooling the logistics of his new allies. For those who still refused his treaties, he deployed a professional legion, a force trained for rapid, continental maneuvers rather than static defense. Every bloodless treaty and every conquered stronghold fed his momentum. By the time the remaining kings recognized the threat, they were facing an integrated continental force they could no longer stop. Septim bypassed the traditional war of attrition. By discarding the rules of localized thinking, he demonstrated that a single, cohesive strategy could physically pull a shattered continent back into one piece. The chaotic borders were finally erased. Tamriel was consolidated under one banner, marking the official birth of the Third Empire. For the population, the results were immediate and tangible. Trade routes opened safely across previously hostile lands, continental markets thrived, and an entire generation experienced peace for the first time in 9 centuries. For a population that had only known fractured borders, Septim became the living personification of the continent's potential. They built towering monuments and grand architecture in his honor. Massive stone statues of the emperor watched over the newly thriving cities. As decades passed and the original citizens died out, the historical facts of his reign merged with oral traditions. The man who conquered the continent was slowly replaced by the stories told about him, twisting military history into religious mythology. Septim redrew the map of Tamriel. In doing so, he achieved a level of control so pervasive that history eventually reframed the conqueror as a deity. If you want to see how this newly forged Third Empire reaches its peak, hit the subscribe button. We'll be diving into the golden age of Tamriel in our next episode.